Sometimes you'll have the perfect subject and even the perfect light, and yet your photo still doesn't look quite right. There's something missing from it. And often what that is the composition, or where you've actually placed the subject on the frame, and what you've done with the background. So in this video, I'm going to look at different ways you can improve your composition and make your photos look as good as they possibly can. And then look at where you like the way this comes across. Regardless of what you're shooting, I reckon the single most important tip for improving your composition is to turn on the grid. This is an alignment system that actually places 4 lines on the screen, 2 vertically, 2 horizontally, splitting it up into 9 squares, 3 by 3. It looks like the kind of grid you'd get on a tic-tac-toe or a noughts and crosses board. And what this lets you do is very quickly and easily see whether a subject is slap bang in the middle or slightly off center. It also lets you very easily check whether the horizon is squint or perfectly straight. Because believe me, if that horizon is just rotated even slightly, it can really spoil your pictures. So the first step, enable that grid. That grid is useful for more than just ensuring that the horizon is straight and the subject's in the middle. You can also use it to apply a compositional guide that's been used by artists for centuries called the rule of thirds. Now, like all rules, it can also be meant to be broken, but it's a great technique to get started in composition and placing things on the frame. So it works like this. As you know, that grid is dividing the picture into 3 stripes vertically and 3 stripes horizontally. Now, what's important are those lines going across and down, and in particular where they cross each other. Now, we've actually framed this shot to use the rule of thirds. I'm at one of the intersecting points, which is where you're supposed to place the subject, but we've also placed one of our horizon lines on one of the horizontal lines. The promenade behind me is on that upper horizontal line, and the strong vertical of the i360 tower is aligned with one of those vertical lines as well. But as I said earlier, where it really comes into its own is where those lines intersect, because that is where you're supposed to place the subject for it to be compositionally more appealing, to be more interesting to the human eye. It's just the way our brains work. So next time you're struggling with a composition, whether you're photographing someone's face or the top of a cup of coffee, or even the dominant building in a frame or a tree on a landscape, try positioning it using the rule of thirds where those lines intersect. Try all 4 of them, and you may find that one of them really just lights up for you and you think, yeah, that's great, that's exactly how I want the picture to look. But again, like all rules, if it doesn't work, break it, ignore it, it's there to be broken. Sometimes all you need for a nicer composition is to just fill that empty space on your shot with something. Maybe the sky's not particularly interesting, or maybe the ground, or in this case the sea. So to liven up this view of the pier, all I'm going to do is step back a little bit and incorporate this wall into my shot. Now, as soon as you step back, you'll notice that it curves around, and you can use that curve to lead the eye into the shot. Nice splash as well if your timing's right. These are called leading lines. They draw the viewer's attention to a certain part of the frame. Maybe it's a person that you want them to look at. Maybe it's part of a building. But they can also just be used as attractive sweeps, as shapes in the frame. And to me, that's a lot more interesting than just going up to the wall, leaning over it, and just getting a vast expanse of sea with nothing really much in there. Always be on the lookout for frames that can make your compositions more interesting. Shoot through them, and then you don't need to worry about a boring sky or ground. This donut sculpture is absolutely perfect with a hole in the middle. I can either go close to the hole and have that completely fill the frame there, or you could go and step back a bit and make a real feature of it, positioning the circle wherever you want on the frame. And also using the rule of thirds that we spoke about earlier to position it over one of those cross points of the lines. You could position that hole towards one of the corners for a little bit more compositional tension and interest. This is another example of using the environment around you to help frame your subject and give it more interest. In this case, the subject is the burnt out pier in the background, and I'm using these giant posts on either side of it to not only draw your attention to the subject in the middle, but also to fill some of that empty space on the left and right sides. It's very easy to do. Just position that main subject in the middle and then move forwards or backwards to move those posts inwards or outwards until they fill the frame exactly how you want them. I'm also embracing shooting into the sun here. A lot of people will tell you it's a terrible technique, but I really like it, and it's also invaluable if you want to create a silhouetted effect. So what I'm doing is actually exposing for the sea. I'm tapping on the sea, those reflective highlights on the phone's screen. The phone re-exposes for them, which in turn makes all of these shapes around it become absolutely black. It turns them into silhouettes, which makes them look particularly dramatic against the sea in the foreground. This technique is also really good at sunrise and sunset, especially when you've got lovely colour and clouds in the sky. So let's say you want to photograph a tall, thin tower like the BAI 360 behind me here. Now that looks absolutely great when you stood underneath it looking up. It converges to a point and you've got the reflective underbelly of the pod reflecting the sea and the beach and the road around it. But from a distance it really is just a pointy stick that juts out into the sky. It can look quite dramatic, but at other times I want to see something framing it, and this Victorian bandstand works perfectly for that. But for me, the success of a picture like this involves symmetry and getting it exactly square and exactly in the middle. So not only do I want that tower to be in the middle, but I want any details around it on the bandstand to be perfectly symmetrical and centered as well. And the way to do that is to look for clues either on the floor and tiling, or in this case around the edge of the roof itself. You'll notice some wrought iron detailing, little kind of spikes coming down. Count how many there are across. Count until you get to the middle and line that up with your subject. Now, it's something that you probably wouldn't even notice if you're just glancing at a picture, but believe me, it makes it much more satisfying subconsciously when you're viewing it. It shows that you've put the effort in, and it really does work.